Esther, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited that you're here. So, Esther, what does confidence mean to you?
I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think what it really boils down to for me is believing that I have control over my future and my life, and that the efforts that I make are likely to get the result that I want.
That's a really powerful statement. And I think because it has the action behind it. I think a lot of times we think of confidence as just being in the mind, but it's true. We have to put action behind it. So what do we do in those situations where, our mind is in alignment with, this is what I need to do, but our actions aren't quite, guided just yet?
That's such a good question. And that's one of the most frequent things I hear from women in my line of work who are wanting to lose weight and improve their health is sort of this, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. And I think we've all experienced that. I certainly know that in business and just kind of in life, we know the steps. Are we taking the steps is the question. And I think it's so important to actually start scratching beneath the surface when you're in that position. It's very easy, especially if you're not very confident with yourself. It's easy to turn that into something negative about you. I'm not doing it because I'm lazy. I'm not motivated. I don't have any discipline. I don't have any willpower. We tend to make it mean something about us as a human being, when in reality, there's usually just some sort of obstacle that we haven't yet identified. So I think the key is really from a place of non-judgment, diving into, well, why am I not? And really getting honest with yourself and kind of poking your brain a little bit and being like, okay, no, I'm not going to settle for, I'm just lazy and I need to do it. I'm going to really force myself to confront what's really going on here. Is it that I don't believe that it's going to work? Is it that I know intellectually what to do, but I don't know how to apply it to myself? What is actually standing in my way? And then once you sort of have identified those hurdles, then it's a matter of figuring out, okay, what do I do about them? Is it a new skill I need to learn? Is it help that I need to enlist? Do I just need to sit down and kind of make a step-by-step plan for myself? But you got to know what you're up against first, and then you can make the plan for overcoming it.
That is so good. Digging deep and then making the plan, and then it's time to execute. So before we talk about all of the work that you help clients do to execute at EA Coaching, I want to understand your perspective on the link between physical health and confidence.
I just think the link it's like a rope. They're just so interwoven. And for me personally, I know that so much of my confidence started by taking control of my health and proving to myself in gym and exercise settings that I can show up for myself when it's hard and when nobody's looking and would know if I didn't, that I can do hard things, that I'm stronger and more capable than I realize. Mm-hmm. And as I started seeing those things in the gym, they started to spill out into other areas of my life. And I started realizing, you know what? I didn't want to do my workout this morning, but I did. And I feel really good for having done it. So what's another thing that I'm, telling myself I don't want to do when in reality, it's only going to benefit me? What are things that I'm telling myself are too hard or too complicated that I've already proven to myself I can learn, I can show up, I can do the hard things. So for me, it was the foundation of my personal confidence. And I see it with clients all the time, that generally we're just feeling out of control with a lot of things in our lives. Maybe we're in jobs that we don't love, or our relationships aren't as good as they could be. We don't love the way that we're showing up for our kids. Generally, it's like we feel like every area of our life could improve, and that can feel so overwhelming that we don't know where to start. And I think starting with health makes the most sense, because not only are you going to get the confidence boosting benefits that I was just talking about, but you're also going to benefit everyone else around you kind of from the inside out. That we typically tend to focus on like the external first. It's like work and then family, kind of monopolize everything. And we get whatever is left over, which is, typically not very much. And when you take the opposite approach and prioritize yourself and your health first, everyone else around you benefits by getting a better version of you, a happier, a healthier, a more confident version who has more energy and is in a better mood and is willing to speak up for herself. And I think there's so much that you can benefit from personally, as well as, kind of in the context of the world by taking a health first approach.
No, I love that you said that. You have to kind of turn that focus in, because it's true. We think about all of our different priorities and obligations, and we're the last on the list if we even make it onto the list. And we view it almost as, I can't think about me until I get these things done, when really it's a matter of, I can't do these things effectively or efficiently unless I tend to myself first. And so starting at, our physiological needs, which are at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs for a reason, like we have to start there. It's just a really powerful way. But I want to distinguish something here, because I know that starting with our physical needs means way more than just, how we look. But I can imagine people could think that we're just focusing on what we see in the mirror. So can you kind of walk us through that distinction?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Most, the state of America is that the majority of the population is overweight. And the first thing on a lot of people's mind is the physical, whether it's seeing a certain number on the scale or wanting their clothes to fit better, things like that. That tends to be kind of the one that's more in your face. But there is so much more to health and happiness and confidence than a number on the scale. And something that's really interesting, I've had so many clients saying that even before they started seeing physical changes, the scale of, maybe moved a few pounds, nothing drastically had changed externally, they started getting compliments. You look so good, you look so happy, you're glowing, you have so much energy, what have you been doing? And they started to make that connection between, it's not what my exterior looks like. It's how I'm thinking about myself. It's how I'm carrying myself. And it's knowing that I am making my health a priority that's helping me stand up straighter, hold my head higher, walk into a room and experience the world differently. And that has nothing to do with a number. And then add to that the fact that the way that a lot of people go about losing weight is often to the detriment of their overall health. I think it's such an important distinction that you make, that they're not synonymous. And when we say health, we don't necessarily mean weight loss. That does not have to be a goal for you ever. That is up to you. But there are a lot of things that you can do to improve your overall health and happiness and confidence that likely will have an impact on what you look like externally. But when you focus more on just becoming the best version of yourself, aligning your day-to-day actions with the things that you value, and treating yourself like a person that you care about, and doing the things that are good for you, going outside and taking walks, doing strength training so that you can be strong and independent and healthy later in your life, eating nutritious foods that fuel you for your lifestyle. So you don't need to be relying on caffeine all the time and you're not crashing when you get home. All of those things will promote your health completely independent of weight loss. And often weight loss just kind of becomes the cherry on top. A lot of our clients will say, I had no idea the mental benefits I was going to experience. And, I came into it wanting to lose weight. And now, even though I have, it's just so far down on the list of things that I'm proud of, because I see how differently I'm viewing myself and I'm viewing the world. And I actually believe in myself again. And that's just so much more valuable than whatever the scale happens to be saying.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one really important thing to note is just kind of the switch that happens when we're prioritizing ourselves, which I think is part of what you're speaking to, as well as, and is a part of what your clients are experiencing. When we kind of say, I'm going to pour into my own cup, or like you just said, I think you said, treating ourselves like someone we love, right? When we start actually doing that and putting that into action and scheduling self-care time, whether it's taking a walk, working out, or just, getting up to make that smoothie in the morning, we're saying very basically and fundamentally, I matter. And I think that's a really powerful statement to make.
You're absolutely right. It's so powerful. And so many women just have kind of gotten caught up in life and haven't been treating themselves like they matter. And it can be a tricky switch, and it can feel selfish or induce guilt and things like that. And that's a big part of the work, is figuring out, actually being able to identify the emotions that you're feeling and recognizing why you're feeling them. And then starting to question, are those thoughts actually true? Are they serving me? Are they helping me be the best version of myself? And if not, realizing that you do have the power to change your thoughts. It's not easy work. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is something that you can control. And it can be incredibly empowering to realize that and start taking the steps to put yourself back at the top of the list.
Yeah. So where do you think those thoughts come from? Because first of all, we're not our thoughts. We're the observer, we're the thinker of the thoughts, but somehow, some way we come to identify with these non-truths about ourselves, whether it's I'm too big, I'm too small, I'm not good enough. Oh, what does it matter if I do this? It won't make an impact. All sorts of thoughts that we have about ourselves and the value of our lives. Where the heck do they come from?
That is such a good question. And they come from a lot of places. They come from basically everywhere. They come from our childhood, our upbringing. This is something I've become more and more aware of. I have a 4.5-year-old, and knowing what I know about brains, I sometimes in the moment, I will catch myself and I'll be thinking, okay, is what you're saying right now something that he's going to have to do work to unlearn when he's a grown-up? And that's a big piece of it, is when we're young, we're just sponges for what's around us. And we don't necessarily understand context or nuance. We just pick up on the very, kind of literal. I saw my mom standing in front of the mirror every day, pinching her fat rolls. And that became the thing that I thought women do when we stand in the mirror. That was the example that was set for me. It's not even necessarily coming from a place of, direction toward you. It's just what you see from the world, not just the people that you live with, not just your parents, but the society that you're exposed to. How were you treated and what did you see when you were young and impressionable? What things actually were said directly to you? Were you put in Weight Watchers at 11 years old and raised to believe that your worth is dependent on your thinness? All of those things. And, as we get older and we have adult relationships, what were your interactions like with those people? Did they see your value independent of your size? What sort of social media content or media content do you watch? Have you been internalizing for your entire life these thoughts? And then, sort of your own interpretation of events. When something happens, have you placed yourself in a victim role? Have you decided this individual instance is not an individual instance, it's indicative of who I am as a person? And all of that kind of gets wrapped up as we get older. And most of us reach adulthood and don't even know that these things aren't blanket truths about the world, because we just assume, well, everyone thinks this. Why we don't even think to question it. And I remember when I was first introduced to thought work, and my coach at the time said to me, well, thoughts are just sentences that you've thought over and over. They're not true. And I was like, hang on one second. This is going to need some time. And I think that's really what's so important, is realizing how you perceive the world is not how everyone does. You and I could experience the same thing right now and have two completely different interpretations of it. And that can be very confusing, but also really empowering to know, well, in that case, if I get to just decide what this means or doesn't mean, like, wow, what am I going to shed from my past that has just been weighing me down and doesn't have to anymore? What am I going to, we have an exercise we do with clients about breaking up with your past self. And we talk about like being in the attic of your brain and just kind of like sweeping out these cobwebs that you're just like, get out of here. Like, I do not need you anymore. And once you do that, you just get to decide, how do I want to believe things are going forward? And that's just, having that blank slate is just so cool.
So I want to know how you got to where you are today, because you just gave us a load of just, it's so good, right? Like, we don't have to identify with our thoughts. We can sweep away those cobwebs and become anew. So how did you get here? And what was the path to actually realizing that for yourself?
It has been, like for all people, it's been a windy path. And I think that's so important to emphasize, because when it's our own journey, we want it to be very linear and straightforward and like just a straight line forward. It's going to be easy. And it's just not what it's like. Every single one of us experiences ups and downs and kind of switchbacks and loop loops where you're just like, I could have sworn I was just here. That's just a process. There's no oval track like behind your high school that you just go around and around. It's convoluted. So my experience has been no different. I got involved in exercising when I was in high school, right before choosing a college major. And like I said, it helped me develop as a young adult, and it helped me build confidence. And I had all these positive thoughts towards exercise. And I was like, well, I guess I'd like to just get paid to work out all day. So I went to school for exercise science, quickly found out that I would not be getting paid to work out all day, but I didn't really have a plan B. So got my degree, got certified as a personal trainer. I started working at a commercial gym right after college. And when I started working with real women, I realized just what a small piece of the puzzle the exercise was. And that most of my clients, I would see them for like 30 minutes a week. And then every week they'd come and say they're frustrated that they hadn't lost weight. And I remember just realizing, okay, there's a lot more to it than this. I need to be better equipped to talk about the rest of their lives, not just what we're doing in the gym. So that led me to pursuing nutrition certifications and internships and kind of building out that piece of it. And then even with that, realizing that all of the textbook knowledge in the world isn't actually serving my clients if I can't present it to them in a way that helps them actually take action. So that led me down the psychology, behavior change, sort of self-help kind of realm that we've been talking about a lot more, sort of realizing the depth of the complexity when it comes to making these changes, that it's just not as easy as saying, do these workouts and eat this food, because if it was, nobody would struggle. But we know time and time again, even if we have a plan laid out for us, things happen and we don't follow them. So the real work is figuring out, okay, this is kind of the general science that applies to most people. How do we make it work for you? And so that was kind of my education story. In the midst of all that, though, I was in my early 20s, and despite all of my knowledge, still kind of struggling on my own. I didn't have a good grasp on my own nutrition. I was struggling with very textbook kind of restrict and binge behavior, where I would be quote unquote good all week. And then I would feel like I deserved a break over the weekend, and I would just eat and drink everything in sight, feel terrible about it, swear that it was never going to happen again, and that I would double down Monday morning. And I lived in that cycle for a really long time. And a big part of where my coaching now comes from is from what I learned getting myself out of that. And really, it's frustrating, as a lot of people have experienced, when you know something, but you're having a hard time applying it to yourself. You're really hard on yourself. Like, not only do you know what to do, but you're the ones who's supposed to be helping other people do this. And here, look at you now. So it took a lot of work for me to find a place of balance and get out of that cycle, be able to maintain a weight that I'm happy with, that I'm healthy, I'm confident, and it doesn't take a ton of mental energy to stay there. So reaching that place myself was huge. And I knew that that was part of what I had to share, is that it is possible. You can enjoy your life and like how you look and feel. And sort of the final piece of the puzzle was when I was in my mid-20s, as I was sort of working myself through this, I lost my mom to cancer, and she had struggled with her weight most of her adult life. And she had done an incredibly good job shielding me from any of her thoughts about her body. I was one of the fortunate girls who grew up not seeing my mom, pick herself apart, say anything negative, be on these drastic diets. But I knew that she had struggled with it, as I got older and kind of could look back and have that perspective. And I just started to wonder, could her lifestyle have been different if she had someone like me in her life who was qualified to help in this, really holistic way, but also had the empathy and the compassion to actually see her as a person. And I think that's a big piece of what's missing in a lot of the weight loss industry, is that it's just this like very surface level, transactional. All we care about is the numbers. Here you go, figure it out. Let's get a good before and after picture. Good luck down the road. And I just think, how would I want my mom to be treated if she were finally able to ask for help? I know that wouldn't have been easy for her. What do I think she would have needed? And who would I have wanted her to have in her life that could actually make a meaningful difference? So that's sort of the population that we work with now, is women that I sort of see my mom in, or, if they're not that age gap, then would feel like a sister or a good friend. Women who I know have so much value to offer the world and aren't necessarily doing that to the best of their ability because of their weight, or more accurately, because of how they're feeling about themselves. And that is how we've arrived here.
That's incredible. And I love that it's so intricately linked to your life and your relationship with your mom. And I think that, the distinction that you guys make in your practice is very clear. And it's an important one, that we're way more than just the numbers. The numbers are external reflections of what's going on inside. If that's, something that we wanted to change, it's the reason that we're not changing it. The reason that there's resistance is because there's something on the inside of us that's kind of rubbing against or conflicting with that. And so really treating a person holistically, like, what a thought, treating it holistically and looking at, who are you at your core? What's going on here? What are your beliefs and assumptions about yourself that may be hindering you from taking the proper action? And one of the things that I know you talk about, in fact, you have a whole podcast on it, is living diet free. And you mentioned kind of like your week of, you would eat really healthy and be strict during the week, and then kind of do whatever you want on the weekend. And we know, and science has shown that, really strict diets like that, where you're withholding yourself from certain things, don't necessarily work in the long term. So what exactly is living diet free, and does it work if we are trying to lose weight?
Great question. I think one of the most important distinctions is that we have to eat for forever. So nutrition or diet, when in terms of like the food we eat, is a constant in our lives. It's not like other triggers, for lack of a better word, that we can just decide, I need to abstain from this. I'm no longer drinking, or I'm not going to gamble anymore. We can't do that with food. We need to figure out how to improve our relationship with food and our bodies, because it's going to be part of the rest of our lives. And absolutely, you can lose weight without being or feeling like you're on a diet. And a big part of that is recognizing that nothing needs to be off limits. Yes, you are going to need to learn portion control. You are going to sometimes need to tell yourself no, because there are going to be a lot of times that our short-term needs and wants are at odds with the longer term. And getting in the habit of pausing and asking yourself, do I really want this? Is it worth it right now to know that it is going to have an impact down the road? Sometimes it is going to be worth it, and that's fine. You get to decide. But there are going to be times that you need to give yourself a little bit of tough love and say, not right now. I'm not saying I'm never going to eat this again. I'm saying right now, I can't just keep making the same choices and expect something to be different. I do need to start evaluating the frequency, the size of the indulgences that I'm making, but nothing needs to be off limits. And when you take that approach, it's so foreign. Most of us have been brainwashed to think I shouldn't be eating white carbs. I shouldn't be eating sweets. I shouldn't be eating sugar. I shouldn't be eating, whatever, insert whatever here, because everything has taken its turn on the bad list. And unlearning that is not necessarily easy, but it's so freeing when you do. And I've had so many clients who are like, I'm just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm not feeling hungry all the time. I'm not feeling deprived. I've been, having dessert and I'm still losing weight, but like, when is it going to end? When does this stop? And that's a big piece of where the mindset work comes in, is reprogramming. Losing weight doesn't have to be miserable. A lot of us have that association where if I'm not suffering, I must not be working hard enough, or I must not be doing it right. And therefore I'm not going to get results. So recognizing it doesn't actually have to be that way. You can mostly enjoy what you're eating and also see results. So that's really kind of what's behind living diet free. It's not that you're completely unaware or not caring about what you're eating. It's recognizing that the way I'm going to eat is to fuel my lifestyle. It's not just fuel for life. It's also memories. It's also connection. It's so tied into everything that we do. You don't need to be a robot in order to see results. You get to live the healthiest life that you enjoy. And that's likely going to include your favorite foods.
Yeah, I like that you pointed that out, because a lot of times we hear very strictly that like food is your fuel and that is all. And so when we think about a fitness or, health journey, we think of really restricting ourselves because food is just fuel. I shouldn't enjoy this. I have to turn that off. Otherwise I'll never get to where I want to be. And I like the slow but sustainable approach, because we can make these huge changes in our lives and maybe keep them up for a while, but how do we make this something that is enjoyable so that we can do it for a lifetime? Because we just get one body, we have one. And so we need to be able to take care of that in a way that looks good and feels good for us, but can last long term. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with just the holistic well-being. So how do we integrate healthy and holistic habits into our lives? So what are some small hacks that we can take away?
Great question. So we have something we call the big rocks. And a big piece of our approach to exercise and nutrition is to really simplify things. Because any woman who's been trying to lose weight for any period of time knows that wherever you turn, there's conflicting information. You look at one place and it's saying you need to keep your carbs under 30 grams a day. And the next site is saying you should only be eating 6 hours a day. And by the time you've looked at all the things, you're like, well, I have no idea what to do. And I certainly don't want to do the wrong thing. So I guess I shouldn't do anything until I have the answer. And there just isn't one answer. There are general principles that I'll share in a second that will benefit most of the population. But what it looks like for you is dependent on so many different variables of your lifestyle. So the exercise, big rocks, the way the things that are going to get you the most bang for your buck, and also are the places that it's easiest to kind of take baby steps to get started. Focusing on your daily general movement in the form of a step goal. You probably have heard, I should be getting 10,000 steps a day, things like that. That's really kind of an arbitrary number that started as a marketing thing for a Japanese pedometer company. So there's no magic behind 10,000 steps, but basically what a step goal is a proxy for you just having a generally active lifestyle. As modern conveniences have developed, we've worked ourselves into very, very sedentary positions where we can work from home. We can get our groceries delivered. We can get whatever food we want delivered within minutes. We have endless options of what to watch on TV. We could, without being intentional, we could barely move all day. And a lot of us experienced that in early the pandemic days when it was, new and kind of novel to be like, well, I don't have to go anywhere or do anything. But the reality of it is, for a lot of us, we need to be much more intentional about moving than we ever have before. So it's not that the steps are magic. It's that they give you some sort of benchmark to keep an eye on how much am I moving. I know if I don't take a walk or don't, do chores around the house or things like that, I'll get like 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day. And if that's where you're at, or even below that, that's fine. It's really just about establishing your baseline and setting incremental goals from there. I think a good, reasonable range to shoot for most people is about 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day. If you can get in the 8 to 10 range, amazing, but give yourself time to get there. It took me years to work up to that. And very kind of stereotypically, I had a lot of starts and stops where I tried to go from 3,000 steps to 10. And it just felt like I was constantly walking. It's like, this is disrupting my day. I just can't do it. And I would get discouraged and I would stop altogether. And finally, I started applying what I know to be true, which is, well, just do a little bit more than you've been doing. And then once that feels normal, do a little bit more than that. And now it's rare that I'm under 10,000, but I've given myself years to get here. Yeah, so that's your first exercise, Big Rock.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, how can you be 1% better every single day instead of thinking, 0 to 60?
Exactly. Exactly. And that compounds over time and leads to massive results that never felt overwhelming. That's the key to everything that I could sum up without even doing any of the other big rocks. That's how I could sum it up, is just start. Just start wherever you are, do a little bit better, give yourself the time for that thing to feel more natural and become more of a habit, and then stack another thing on top of it. And it might feel slower at first. And yeah, your results might be slower at first, but there's like a little asterisk by that, because are they actually slower, or are they going to last finally because you're giving yourself the opportunity for them to get established? So it's such classic kind of tortoise and hare. Do you want to keep being the tortoise who burns out and ends up losing? Or do you want to be the tortoise who just like keeps plodding along and is in it for the long haul? That's really the difference right there. So I'll go faster through the rest of the big rocks. So the second exercise one is strength training. Doesn't need to be long or time consuming, but 2 or 3 full body sessions each week, following a progressive program and lifting heavy for you weights. I see so many women who have heavy kids, heavy dogs, heavy stuff that they're moving around the house, are regularly taking a 40-pound kid up the stairs and then get in the gym and are like, oh, I need 5 pounds is too much. It's like, you are so much stronger than you think. So do your strength training, push yourself. You'll love feeling strong. The third one there is just rest and recovery. Most of us are in the habit of running ourselves into the ground, feeling like more is more, and that taking rest days is somehow a bad thing or a sign of weakness or something. It's just not true. You're going to get better results. You're going to feel better, look better if you take rest days. So that's the third one there. And then on nutrition, your total calorie intake matters. How much protein and fiber you're taking in also make a big difference. Those are the 3, big keys. And whether or not you want to track those things, I do encourage it, at least temporarily, because it's incredibly eye-opening and you can learn a ton. But you can also just start with, well, we rarely have a vegetable at dinner. Let's start with that. Or I'm not even really sure if we do eat a lot of protein, what foods have protein. Don't make yourself feel bad for starting like wherever you are. You're not expected to know this stuff. We should be taught this in school, but we're not. So give yourself the opportunity to be a beginner, to ask questions, to learn, and then to apply and see, okay, if I give myself a tally mark for each serving of vegetables I have this week, how much am I falling short of the kind of general guidelines? Why don't I work on 1% better and increase it from there? And that's really what it is just take this gradual approach. And like I was saying earlier, you have to eat for the rest of your life. So this isn't something that you need to be in a rush to figure out or master, because it's constantly going to be evolving and you're going to be growing and changing. So just decide it's never going to be easier than right now to start. And what I learn now is going to benefit me going forward. And I'm willing to develop the skills that I need to make this a long-term value.
I like the slow and steady progress, and it can work for a while, I think, but how do you get yourself out of a rut? Say, like, a lot of things have been happening emotionally, and as you know, many people turn to food or just, cocooning to make ourselves feel better when we're going through a lot. Or maybe it's that we've been really great and consistent, but now we're on vacation and the food looks really good, the drinks are flowing. How do we stay consistent through the ebbs and flow of life?
Great question. And I think it really boils down to having realistic expectations. Mm-hmm. You are not a robot. You are not going to give the same level of effort every single day, all the time. And we know that when it comes to other areas, like, if you're having a busy season at work, that your family is going to see less of you. You know that if a friend just had surgery and you're taking care of her, that you're not going to be, exceeding expectations and, working overtime because there's only so much time to give. I think when it comes to our health and our weight, we expect things to be a lot more static. Like, well, I shouldn't waver at all. I should see the exact same number on the scale. I should always do all the things. That's just not what life is like. So if you are going on vacation, one thing you can do, just period, that's going to benefit you is get in the habit of doing, we call it life admin, just actually sitting down and looking at what's in store for you the next week or the next month, and setting your goals and your expectations based on reality. So, okay, it's not likely that I'm going to stay in my hotel room and make myself oatmeal in the microwave instead of going to the all-inclusive buffet. It's not likely that I'm going to, I can't bring my Peloton bike with me, so my workouts are going to be different. That doesn't mean doing nothing, though. So I think calling yourself out when you start to go down that all or nothing road that's so familiar. If I can't do it perfectly, then I shouldn't do it at all. And remembering there's a lot going on in the middle, and life is happening in the messy middle. Where is the gray area for you? What does more than nothing look like for you? Can you set some bare ass minimums for a trip? At minimum, I'm going to drink my water. I'm going to cap myself at 3 drinks. I'm going to make sure that I, eat a salad before dinner, whatever. It doesn't matter what they are, but actually give yourself the opportunity to think about them in advance, and also think about the temptations you might face or the situations you might be in that could challenge you, and think ahead about how you want to handle them. If someone offers me a drink after I've, had my however many I said I was going to have, then what am I going to do? Planning ahead and giving yourself almost like a default option makes it so much easier in the moment to be like, oh, I don't actually need to think about this because I already decided, here's what I'm going to do. And then, you mentioned emotional eating. That's another one that is so common and we tend to be so hard about ourselves on. I think anytime you're facing a challenge, it's just an opportunity to build a new skill. And for a lot of us, just becoming aware of our emotional eating triggers is huge. Emotions are intended to drive a reaction. Their job is to cause us to take action. So there's nothing wrong with you if you feel a certain way and you jump to food because you're trying to self-soothe. When you have the awareness, though, to be like, you know what, it's not actually soothing, it's making things worse. Then you can work on, okay, so how do I get comfortable sitting with that emotion? Or what are other coping mechanisms I should work on developing so that food isn't the only place that I have to turn? And really all of this life stuff, this is the work for most people. They, like I was saying earlier, the what to do, what to eat, that's the easy part. Where that meets real life is what you need to work on. So learning to reframe these things as just opportunities to practice and learn and grow, I think helps shift your perspective. So instead of like, there's so much pressure on this trip, I need to figure it out. Well, it's not going to be the last vacation you go on. So it's a good opportunity for you to think, last time I took a trip, how did I feel coming back? Do I want to feel that way again? If not, what are some different choices that I could make that will help me come back feeling better? And recognizing you're never going to be perfect. That's never the goal. But that if each time you have the opportunity to experience something and do your best, and then you reflect on it you get to learn and file that away for the next time. And it just gets easier and easier with time and practice to start showing up as the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I think that understanding, right, that life is fluid and that not only are things changing, we are changing and our needs are changing at every given moment, and giving ourselves grace during those hard times to say, one, this is a learning opportunity, so I can learn more about myself and what my triggers are. But two, if I do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, and not, fueling ourselves with these feelings of shame that just perpetuate the cycle that many of us experience, I think is really incredibly important. And so I wanted to ask you just one more question about how to cope. So say we've been trying our best, but things have really gotten the best of us and we've fallen completely off the bandwagon, and maybe we are feeling some feelings of shame because of that. How do we start to re-engage?
Good question. And it is so relatable. So I think that's the first thing to remember, is that this is part of the human experience. We all get down on ourselves sometimes. We all feel like miserable failures who somehow are missing some sort of chip and everybody else just knows what to do and we don't. We all tend to go that sort of Chicken Little, the sky is falling route sometimes and just think this is the worst possible thing. And I think not forcing yourself out of those feelings right away is important. You're allowed to feel crappy sometimes. That's just part of life. And it doesn't mean anything about you as a person, your potential, your ability to be successful, or anything like that, which is where we tend to go with this stuff. So giving yourself some time to just kind of sit and feel those negative feelings. And then remember that you do have the authority over your own life to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move forward. And that's all you can ever do. I think when it comes down to it, you always have a choice. Do you want this to be the time that you just crumble and give up? Or is it important enough to you that you try again? Because really the only way to guarantee that you fail is to stop trying. If you never stop trying, you will not fail. And I think the other thing, I talk about this with clients a lot, is that they're just, when we were talking earlier about, kind of my path and how it was windy and stuff like that, that's what everybody's is like. And we tend to use this really dramatic language, like I got derailed, I'm off track, I'm I'm off the wagon ran me over, all this like really dramatic stuff. I read in a book once that was talking about this and was saying that, like, when a train derails, it's a really big deal. Like, people get killed, there's millions of dollars in damages. It's a legitimate catastrophe. Whereas you overeating for a few days or skipping your workouts for a month or whatever, it's just not that big a deal. It feels like it when you're in the midst of it. And it's hard to zoom out when you're in the throes of that negativity. But if you can work on that and just kind of pause and say, like, if I were a friend of mine seeing me like this, or probably an easier way to say it would be, if your friend was going through what you're going through now, what would you say to her? What advice would you give to her? Would you pile on and be like, yep, you're a miserable failure, you're doomed, you might as well just give up? Of course not. You would be supportive and empathetic and say, like, it's okay, you're doing your best, you're a human, this doesn't have to be the end, you'll bounce back from this, any of those supportive things. Practicing talking to yourself like that and recognizing that this is just part of what your journey looks like. This is one of your valleys. We all have peaks and valleys. You're in one right now. It's not insurmountable, but you don't need to make it this big to do. I'm off the wagon. How do I get back on? It's like, you just get up and you just make the next best choice. It doesn't need to be this whole thing. You just decide. We have hundreds of opportunities throughout the day to make the next best choice. Just do that. One is going to make you feel so much better. And then another and another, like you're saying, 1% better. It compounds over time. And one final thing I'll add is, a lot of us tend to have this very black and white mentality about the day or the week, where if you, mess up at dinner, well, I blew the whole day. I might as well just eat whatever I want now until I go to bed, and then tomorrow I'll start over. Or, like I used to do, I was really quote unquote good all week and then quote unquote bad all weekend, and felt like, well, if I mess up on Friday, there's no point in starting it until Monday. We have these very black and white reactions, but starting to think in terms of like quarters of the day. So if you're on a sports team and you have a bad third quarter, do you just stay in the locker room for the fourth quarter? No, you show up, you do your best, and the game's not over yet. So taking that approach, whether it's to the day or to the week, can just really help you see like, okay, I might not be proud of what just happened, but it's not too late to just wipe the slate clean, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah, I love that. So before I let you go, what are 3 positive affirmations that we can take away and integrate into our lives?
Ooh, this is a good one. Okay. I can do hard things. There is nothing that I can't learn or develop. And it gets to be easy.
I love that. It gets to be easy. Well, thank you so much, Esther, for joining me in Confidence Conversations today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an awesome conversation.